Today's target says, I can measure the length of objects to the nearest 1/4 of an inch using a ruler. When we measure objects, again, it's important that we line our objects up straight with our ruler, starting at 0. And we're trying to figure out how tall or long an object is. And today we're going to use rulers that are broken up into 1/4 of an inch sections. We can tell that our rulers have 1/4 of an inch marks by looking at the 3 tick marks between each of our whole numbers. This breaks up each of the whole numbers into 4 sections. And we're using the ruler today, which is a tool used to measure the length of objects, and we're going to have whole numbers and fractions. Now, as a reminder, a fraction is when you have a piece or part of a whole. Just like if you were to get a half of a cookie, this isn't a whole cookie. You only have part of a cookie. Same thing if you were to just get 1/4 of a piece of cookie, it's not the whole thing, it's only a part. So that's what a fraction is, it's just a piece of a whole. We're going to have these 3 rulers again today, and I want us to again look at those differences. They all have the numbers 1 through 12, but they have a different amount of tick marks between each of our whole numbers. In that first ruler, you don't see any tick marks between my whole numbers. In the second ruler, we just have 1 tick mark, and in my last ruler, we have 3 tick marks between the whole numbers. This is going to be important for identifying our fractions. In that first ruler that we saw a lot on Friday, in between each whole number, we just have 1 tick mark, which separates that space into 2 pieces. That's why the bottom number is 2. So I have 1/2 and then 1 inch, 1 1/2, 2, 2 1/2, 3, 3 1/2, 4, 4 1/2, 5. When we get down to our next ruler, since I have more tick marks, I'm going to have more fractions between the whole numbers. And I'm going to have 4 sections this time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Since there are 4 sections between each of my whole numbers, my bottom number on my fraction is going to be 4. So let's label these tick marks. The first one would be 1/4. And notice the first tick mark is 1/4. First and 1. First grade has that number 1 to designate that grade. I can help you remember. Our second tick mark is going to be 2/4. Notice both fractions have a 4 on the bottom. Can you guess what my third tick mark might be? It's going to be 3/4 of an inch. And then I would get to my 1 whole inch. And that pattern starts repeating. Just like before on our ruler, if you pass a whole number, you have to include that whole number with your fraction. So after we passed 1 inch, we went to 1 1/2, 2 inches, 2 1/2, 3, 3 1/2. On the second ruler, after I pass the 1, I'm going to include that whole number 1 with each of these fractions. 1 1/4, 1 2/4, 1 3/4. And notice that I still have that line in the very middle of each of my whole numbers. That's just like what we learned the other day. That middle line is still also known as 1/2. So you can write your answer as 2/4 or 1/2. As 1 2/4 or 1 1/2. And that pattern continues. So after I pass the whole number 2, I go to 2 1/4, 2 2/4, 2 3/4. And who thinks they know another way to write 2 2/4? Again, this is that tick mark right in the middle of 2 and 3. You can use the ruler up at the top to help you. If you said 2 1/2, you would be correct. And notice how this tick mark lines up with the one on the bottom. And again, that pattern would keep continuing after each whole number. So I want to measure the length of this line down below. I notice that I have the 3 tick marks in between each of my whole numbers. So I have those 4 spaces. I know that my answer is going to have a 4 in the bottom of my fraction. And I notice that it's passing the whole number 1. Is it pointing exactly at whole number 1? No. It's at 1 and the first tick mark. So 1 and 1/4 inches. And you can label your tick marks to help you remember that pattern. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. Just don't forget to include your whole number with each of your fractions if you pass a whole number. Let's look at another example. I've lined up my line with 0. It's straight with my ruler. Have I gone past the whole number 1? Not quite. It's shorter than 1. This is why we need fractions, because you're going to have objects that are shorter than 1 inch. I'm noticing that it's at the 3rd tick mark after 0. So I'm thinking of that pattern again, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. My answer would be 3/4 inches. Let's try this example. I'm going past the whole number 1. It hasn't reached the whole number 2 yet. So I know my answer is going to be 1 and something. And I notice that it's that second tick mark after 1. It's right in the middle of 1 and 2. So I can actually have 2 answers on this problem. This can be 1 and 2/4 or 1 and 1/2. Again, that middle tick mark can have 2 answers. It represents 2/4 and 1/2. Let's try this example. It's going past the whole number 2, so I know that my answer is going to include the whole number 2, but it's also reaching that first tick mark. So 2 and, what fraction would this be? 2 and 1/4 inches. What about the length of this line? You can use that pattern, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4 to help you. It's at the 3rd tick mark after 9. So if you said 9 and 3/4, you would be correct. What about this line? It's at the 2nd tick mark after 5. Pause the video to see if you can figure out the answer. Again, remember that pattern, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. And since it's at that 2nd tick mark, that middle tick mark, it can have 2 answers. So if you said 5 and 2/4 or 5 and 1/2, you are correct. If you said both of these answers, that's amazing. Awesome job. Let's try this line. Notice that it's stopping at this tick mark that has a number at it. It's exactly on a whole number. So my answer is simply going to be 3 inches. We can still have whole numbers as answers. You're going to have a couple examples to try on your own. Don't forget to line up your objects with 0, and you can draw lines straight down to help you figure out which tick mark your objects are landing on.